Yeah, it's a book by Daisetz Suzuki. It's a volume 28 out of 30 some volumes. And I'm reviewing a few writings he did. This is kind of like article writings that he did for the Zen community. And all the books in English are only a small portion of the huge amount of work he has done. And like this one, as I'm planning and I'm already starting to go for an 8-month or more trip out of Santa Monica, I decided to pick one book, and this is the book. And as I opened just the beginning part of, I've seen other part, but this beginning part is written in 1917. So he must have been about 50 years old or so. And the title is An Angle of Zen or something of that nature in Japanese. And I'm hoping that many of those Japanese books can be translated into English sometime, because there's so much into it. And I think one of the reasons why he didn't or he couldn't is that his wife passed away, who is American, and perhaps due to that, and then he started to realize more time spent in Japan because of World War II and so forth. He did more of writing in Japanese. So all the English that is shared is maybe 40%, 50% of the portion of his work. But when it comes to not the volume, but the depth of what he has done, as I found in this volume, it's very deep and more subtle. And that's why I thought I would give it a try to say something about this, 15 pages or so. Maybe I go into two segments, but see if I can communicate, or at least capture the essence out of these 15 pages, so that there's some sense that some viewer, if there isn't any, may find it somewhat interesting or important to know what Zen is about. And I think he wrote this because, for example, the first part he said, Zen is not to be found in the area of the wisdom, not the wisdom, the knowledge or study. So it's not there. So you cannot just explain someone else's work and try to get the point out of it. It's very experiential. That's something that we need to understand. So if we look at only one aspect of Zen, say someone convincingly talk about it, but it's not carrying the whole weight. And that is to be experienced by each person. So one of the reasons why I do 1-minute video and various others are kind of related to that, because you can describe to a degree, but the description is like looking at the three-dimensional picture from different angle. But at the end, it is to grasp the whole point of it by each person. Well, it's a long story to talk about this basic stuff, but it's kind of like an artist. You can learn or how to swim in sports. You can learn from the class, but you have to practice. And that's why it takes time for years of practice, right or wrong. But all the effort that you get out of the book is not to be wasted, but somehow to be connected and lived upon. That's the whole point of it. And that's kind of like my summary at age 75 after going through this process of learning and also practicing with meditation and so forth for the 40-year time period. And obviously he, at the age of 50 or so, he captured this, well known already at the time, and captured in this 15 pages or something. So the first point, few pages, was just to give the background that you cannot just look at one angle of Zen and trying to understand what Zen is. Obvious. Then he talks about mu or nothingness, that just to carrying out some of the thought that is discussed in Zen for people to get, first by knowledge, but hopefully with experience. So there are lots of discussion about nothingness or mu. And example, he's talking about Joshu, the sixth patriarch. He was talking about the body is like a Bodha tree, and the mind may be like a clear mirror, and every now and then you need to clean up so that the dust doesn't accumulate. That was one thought, who the Joshu is known to be well known at the time as a master, but yet there's a countering gather, or I think that's the poetry kind of thing to contrast to this saying by, this is Eno, who said the mind or the body-mind is not like a tree, like Joshu talking about the Bodhi tree, and also not like the mirror that is sitting on the base. The reason is that there's basically nothingness, nothing to have. Therefore, why the dust may be accumulated. So one is talking about basically conceptual understanding of how the dust can come and we need to work on cleaning up. The other one is saying that it's already empty, so why bother to be concerned about accumulating the dust? It shouldn't be bothering you. In essence, that's contrasting to what's in the mind to think about then, and the other is from the heart point of view, what the then is from the core of our being, the law of nature manifesting, and you have the experience and the understanding of it. You don't have to worry too much about the dust or the delusion to come about and be bothered. So there's a level of mastery, and that's the point of the sixth patriarch. Jinshu is saying one, but Eno is much more advanced in the sense of he is just be with the way of the nature, and nothing should be bothered. No delusion would hang around in him. So he's talking about that. And then he starts to talk about various other expressions. One is that if you have mind and brain to be clear, and in that state, even fire, the trouble that you may have, is like a cool breeze. So this is kind of like too much that you might think. But if you read this the first time, you may look like this Zen expression is like asceticism, just killing yourself, and that's not the point of it. I think that's what he's saying, that it could be interpreted in a very dangerous manner if you look at the angle of Zen in certain direction. That's the point. So going back to understand the Zen from literature and so forth, what you need to realize is that you have to get the Zen itself. That's the point of it. It's experientially, and that the whole to be received in your body. That's the expression. And then with that, if you have that, then we can have various stories to go with it. But if you don't have that, the orientation of grasping and connecting the core of who you are, all the discussion, the Zen saying, and poem and the koan may be felt as totally not feasible to digest, because again you're caught up in the mind. So he talks about the fact that the Zen idea is to grab the heart of it without language or the words. Ishin Tenshin, the mind that you have it is communicated without transferring, going through the word and logic, directly getting the sense of the heart. So that's the main point. And related to that is the point that the Zen goes beyond the logic, the paradox of logic, and then find the core at the root level, and that's where the Zen is. And one expression to get the core is no thinking, as I may have mentioned here and there. Not in the mind. The mind is to be clear and then get to the core of who you are, true self. Recently I mentioned about, what was it? Your mind, the brain, and the heart. And I mentioned about gateless gate. If you are occupied in the mind, you can connect to, possibly, to the heart, the core of who you are. But you may find there's a gate, impenetrable gate, from the mind point of view. Just like the Jinshu talked about. From the mind you can say anything you want, but that doesn't carry the point that you are truly grasping the core of being who you are. And to have that, and to go beyond the mind, therefore, is the word hishiryo, no thinking. So you think of no thinking. That's the paradoxical expression in meditation. So that's the main point. In meditation, we are to focus on safe breathing or inner body sensation, like in Vipassana. And when the thought pops up, you don't dwell on it. When you're not experienced, you get caught up in the mind, and endlessly one thought to the other, and there's no open gate. You are just thought after thought. I think Yuval Noah Harari said that he has gone through later 60-day meditation in Vipassana, but he found that he couldn't let the thought to go away. And he got so much trouble, but start to realize the importance of opening up your heart and connecting to it. And in his case, many hours of training was needed, but that clarified his mind, the way to use the brain or the mind. And there are many stories like that, and my story is similar, and I can think of similar example. Eckhart Tolle has the story of him feeling like committing suicide because he's just working in the brain, in the mind, and he one day, after feeling like committing suicide, he realized that, why am I doing this? But when he thought about it, me doing what? Who is that me looking at me, myself? I cannot stand myself. What's the two eyes? Are they the same or different? And that's the opening that he had for his awakening. In my case, I was struggling to get out of the pain. I thought about why am I to get out of pain? Maybe that's the reason for my having a pain. So that's the thought, like pain induced by myself. If so, who is that me to think like that? So that's the paradoxical, the question that I had triggered my awakening, which is like 23 years ago. I wrote down something about it. If anybody interested, I can share. That's 20 some years ago. And I still go through the same process of realizing the falseness of the ego or the thought or the delusion that may come up. But then you settle with clarity in your mind, no thinking, no mind, to open up your heart and connecting to it. So that's the basic point. And therefore, his pointing here refers to the absolute affirmation of what it is. And I'm just translating from Japanese. And what that point to is that absolute affirmation by connecting who truly we are, awakened state. And that state is when you have the opening and connection to your heart. That's the awakening. And with that affirmation, that there's something happens beyond the logic that we may experience in this awakening experience, and that's what the Zen is getting at, or the Vipassana. Vipassana may be different from Zen, but in Soto Zen, Dogen has very similar idea of just sit, be calm, or Shila Samadhi Panya, right? Do the right thing, have a calm and quiet mind. The awakening or intelligence, the wisdom, compassion would come out. That's the absolute affirmation of what is, and it's the life, and therefore, beyond the logic, you find strong vibration of life energy coming out beyond the logical expression. So that's what he's talking about, and that's what the Zen say. Daisetz says that that's the life of who we are, that absolute affirmation. And without that, we cannot act every day on anything we do, including heart pumping and circulating, food digested, do this, do that. That magic happens because of that affirmation that life energy comes out. That's the grasp and connection at the Satori or enlightened state or awakened state of who we are. And with that, and this is the last part, maybe I will finish this, is that Joshu, one of the famous Zen master, who said he used time. He found a way to use time, meaning he used the brain, the logic and word, instead of being used or caught up in it. So that's penetrating from impossible to go to possible. Given the dualistic notion of this and that, we have at the heart the absolute sense, absolute aliveness, life coming out. That's the Zen. It's what this is about. So maybe that's good enough, and there are a few more pages. Maybe I have another occasion to talk continuing this. But just one note I have it here to share is that there's a paradox. But at the end, don't be caught up in logic alone. Otherwise, you may lose the connection to who you are. Something like that. Maybe confusing, maybe not. Maybe conceptually understood, maybe not experientially understood. That's the entrance.